everybody. Welcome to Temenos. And I'm Mike Gerdes, and delighted to be here again with you folks. I hope you enjoy what you have to hear here today. And if you don't like what you hear here today, my name is John Smith. What I'd like to do is, let's start off with a song from Meg and Hannigan that's going to be singing, and called Refiner's Fire. So ladies, please stand.
Yeah, we can sing through once so we can hear it.
They want everyone to
Please
participate,
stand.
right? So they're asking you to stand.
Purify my heart, let me be as gold and precious silver. Purify my heart, let me be as gold. Your Lord, refiner's fire. My heart's one desire is to be holy, set apart for you, Lord. I choose to be holy, set apart for you, my Master, ready to do your will. Purify my heart, cleanse me from within, and make me holy. Purify my heart, cleanse me from my sin, deep within, refiner's fire. My heart's one desire is to be holy, set apart for you, Lord. I choose to be holy, set apart for you, my Master, ready to do your will.
Oh, you did a great job. Give yourselves a hand. Meg, you do a wonderful job. You may be seated. Now, if you choose, I'd like you to join me in a meditation. And as you remember last time, I start off with a meditation, and then we go into silence. Because that's what I do every day. So, here we go. God's the love I am. God's the love that I am. God's the love that I am. God's the love I am. God is the love that I am. God is the love that I am. God is the love that I am. God's the love I am. O radiant Christ, O giver of life, I surrender to you. O radiant Christ, O giver of life, I surrender to you. I surrender my heart to you. I surrender my heart to you. I surrender my heart to you. I surrender my heart. O radiant Christ, O giver of life, I surrender to you. O radiant Christ, O giver of life, I surrender to you. I surrender my mind to you. I surrender my mind to you. I surrender my mind to you. I surrender my mind. O radiant Christ, O giver of life, I surrender to you. O radiant Christ, O giver of life, I surrender to you. I surrender my flesh to you. I surrender my flesh to you. I surrender my flesh to you. I surrender my flesh. O radiant Christ, O giver of life, I surrender to you. O radiant Christ, O giver of life, I surrender to you. I surrender my life to you. I surrender my life to you. I surrender my life to you. I surrender my life. O radiant Christ, O giver of life, I surrender to you. O radiant Christ, O giver of life, I surrender to you. I surrender my world to you. I surrender my world to you. I surrender my world to you. I surrender my world. I am in Christ. Christ is in me. I am in Christ. Christ is in me. I am in Christ. Christ is in me. Oh.
I give thanks that right here and right now there's a presence and a power that overspans eternity and finds a dwelling place in the I am that I am, the I am that each and every one of us are. And I know today that Spirit opens our minds and our hearts to a greater realization, a greater idea of the presence, a greater experience of the presence of God in and as our lives. I know that love is felt here today. I know that greater joy is realized here. And I know that we will leave here today void, lifted up, and a different person than we came in, because we walk with God. For this I give thanks, releasing this word to the wall. I know it is so, and so it is. Amen. Well, now we have an opportunity for another song. And so we're going to be singing now, Seek Ye First. Megan? You want them to stand? Please stand.
Hallelujah.
I've selected a couple readings today, and the first reading Tom's going to share with us was written by Manuel Swedenborg, and some of you have heard him. From chapter 14 of Heaven and Its Wonders of Hell.
The divine in heaven, which makes heaven, is love. Moreover, love is the very being of everyone's life. Consequently, from love, both angels and men have life. Everyone who reflects and can know that the innermost vitality of man is from love, since it grows warm from the presence of love and cold from its absence, and when deprived of it, he dies. But it is to be remembered that the quality of his love is what determines the quality of each one's life.
Thank you. And to share with us today a reading from the book of Matthew. I'd ask Geraldine to share. Please.
A reading from the book of Matthew, chapter 6, verses 21 and 24, and 31 through 33. For where your treasure is, will your heart be also. No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve God and mammon, meaning lust after riches. Therefore, take no thought, saying, what shall we eat? Or what shall we drink? Or wherewithal? How will we have the money needed that we be clothed? For after all these things do the Gentiles seek, meaning those ruled by their physical senses. For your heavenly knoweth that ye have need of all these things. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you.
Thank you. All right. So the title of my talk today is No Peace in the Thingdom. And one I got to check to make sure we're not doing another song first. Okay, No Peace in the Thingdom. And I got a question. How many of you guys are happy today and how many are grumpy? I look around, I see some, oh, most of you are happy. Of course, the ones that are grumpy won't raise their hands. So, the purpose is for us to embrace the presence of God today and recognize that that's the place where heaven is to be found. By embracing and instilling, revealing that presence of God that resides within all of us. And to really know that heaven on earth is here and now. That's what we're taught. That's what we're taught in this teaching. This is taught in the teaching for ones I come. We have a lot of commonality. We teach that all is in God and God is all there is. We teach as Jesus taught, as you believe, so is done unto you. And that we have a duty or something we're drawn to in life, and that's the love that look more forward. And that's the essence of our teachings. I know that for some of us, our lives haven't necessarily been filled to our expectations, that there's always more to be revealed, that there's some areas of our life we thought, gee, I never thought I'd be winding up this way. So, I know a lot of people, if they only had enough stuff, if they only had that Tesla, white Tesla, Model 10, 7-passenger car with gold wings, then they'd be happy. I could get behind that for about 6 car payments. And then I'd have maybe a change of heart. I knew this one guy by the name of Roy Davis from, this goes way back to when I was in Kettle, Washington. Now Roy Davis was like one of the wealthy men. And he really believed that he who died with the most toys wins. And I was thinking to myself as I last saw Roy, he was in his hospital bed overlooking the Columbia River. And I heard later that he died, but it said, it wasn't he who died was the most toys. It was his daughter. It was his daughter that inherited all that. She won. But then do you think, no matter how much stuff you have, are you really happy because of the stuff? Did you notice that sometimes you get the stuff and then a little while later it's not so fancy, it's not so special? And what about the things that were given to you as a kid that you didn't really appreciate? You know, you appreciate things more that you earned than the things that are given to you oftentimes. And then even after you get things, sometimes the attraction to them wane. I would think that if happiness from stuff came from stuff, the people that would be the happiest in the world would be the hoarders, right? But it's not so. I know that if I could find happiness from stuff, I've got an extra space storage unit full of it. Some of you may be able to relate. Okay, how many of you have garages that you can't fit your cars into because of your stuff? Okay, at least one.
I don't
See,
have a
there's a lot
garage.
of honesty here. It's really good. It's stuff. You know, and some of this stuff, I know that some of the stuff we hold on to, we've got attachment to it. But there's really no use for it anymore. And the problem is, when we're holding on to stuff, we don't have room for other stuff, right? And really blocks the flow in our lives sometimes. If you really want to have greater prosperity in your life, go home and clean out your closet. Seriously, you'll find it opens up. How about happiness from the work you're doing? Everybody's got happiness from the work that they're doing, right? I've observed happiness in our work comes from less than the work that we're doing than with our intention behind the work we're doing. I was talking to Ann ahead of time. And when I was a young boy, my parents got me music lessons. Some of you may have been given music lessons. And so they started me off with an accordion, but fortunately for them, we stopped that real soon. But then they put me on the drums, and I turned out to be natural on the drums. I got really good at the drums. And you know, when you're a kid, it's really good to be good at something. I mean, you know, you could be a good basketball player, you could be really good at math, something that makes you special. Buys my identity. So I was a snare drummer. Boy, good snare drummer. I aced snare drumming. All the way through high school, then going off to college. Played in the college orchestra and stuff. Played in some symphonies. I was the ace percussionist. Because I grew beyond just like a snare drum. Then I found myself dropping out of school, becoming a rock and roll star. Because I came to recognize that becoming a high school band director was not my idea of the kind of life I wanted to live. Anybody listen to a high school band? You know what I'm talking about. Especially if you had to do it all the time. If you've got your own child in it or your grandchild in it, that's different. So I was on the road, and for about 18 years, playing music. And I got to tell you, a musician's life is not necessarily all a bed of roses. It's true that there are, could you say that roses have thorns or thorn bushes have roses? I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag. And I remember being in I played just about every kind of band you could think of. And I can remember then being in Richland, Washington at the Hanford House. And usually the jobs, or the gigs we called it at the time, would last maybe 2 weeks with a 2-week follow-up, or maybe 3 weeks with a 3-week follow-up if it was longer. This one was booked for 1 week short of 6 months. That's a long time because we kept getting renewed. And they finally put us into apartments instead of the little rooms we've been put in before, you know. And you can imagine after being in the little motel rooms, this is before microwaves now, when you'd have a toaster oven to cook your stuff in, and you'd have an ice chest to keep your cold stuff in. You do this for a period of time, and somebody gives you an apartment furnished with a couch, and a refrigerator, and a place to put knickknacks on, and drawers, so you didn't be looking out of your suitcases, and a clock. It was. That was an eye-opener. And I started to think to myself, what am I doing this for? Why am I on the road? Why am I playing music? I mean, I enjoyed music, but why am I doing this? And then I remember one night, we were playing along, going through our numbers, and it got me. Why I was doing what I was doing. I was playing for love and appreciation. The love and appreciation that I didn't think I got as a kid. Because I remember when little Mikey, when company came over, little Mikey was brought out to perform. Some of you might be able to relate to that. You know, when company came over, little Mikey did this. It was important for my parents to basically show me off. And so they thought they were giving me love by giving me music lessons and giving me drums. But after giving me a trumpet and giving me a marimba, and giving me a piano, you think they'd stop somewhere, you know? But they kept showering me with this love that I didn't want, at least in that form. But being a latchkey kid, I had a lot of time to practice. But when I recognized that I was in to get love, I wasn't in there just for the joy of playing. Although I had experience in joy of playing, I had it. That's what I like to do for fun, not as a career. And I decided, okay, enough of that. And so I was waiting tables. I was really good at waiting tables. Back in those days, I averaged $5 per person on a table, and that's many years ago. And I waited on this one table, and the guy came up and said, "Son, how'd you like to earn big money in the two-way radio business?" I said, "Sure." You know, sometimes we just stumble across things. People say, "Would you like a job?" Yeah. Because you like the way I sold dinners. I always used to give them a little, "Would you like some asparagus with that?" You know, a little bit of extra stuff. Bump up the ticket, make sure they had their drink. And that, I started working July 11th of 1977, so this past 2 weeks ago, I celebrated my 44th year in selling two-way radio communications. And you think, wow, that's a long time. Where's the joy in that? Well, it's interesting work, but it's not necessarily a joy thing. But one of my first customers was a guy by the name of Andy Ballard. He was one of these custom hay cutter baler people. They lived down in Boardman, Oregon. And I sold him and his son some portable radios so they could better communicate. And I had to do a little persuading that he should get them. Because you got to remember back then, stuff was more expensive than it is now, electronics. And I didn't see him for about 3 months, and then he came into the office, and I didn't recognize them at first. They said, Mike, I came in to thank you for selling me those radios. Because I got caught in the mailer. And if I hadn't had that radio to reach out to my son, I'd have died. So right then I recognized that what I was doing was more than just selling radios. I was providing people with communications that could save their lives. And why today most of my customers are police departments, fire departments, hospitals, schools. I mean, everybody else has got a cell phone. But there's some purpose in what I'm doing. And if you're not necessarily happy with the work you're doing, maybe it's the intention that you're approaching your work. Are you seeing everybody as the potential Christ, or as the Christ child that you're serving or you're working with? Everybody serves somebody. Anybody familiar with the song by Bob Dylan, You Gotta Serve Somebody? Yeah, that's it. Should have you play it today. Because you gotta serve somebody. Everybody's serving somebody, and if you realize you're serving somebody other than yourself, you can find joy in what you're doing. You can find purpose in what you're doing. You're working a checkout stand. You got purpose. You're helping people get the stuff that they need to have to live the life that they fill up the cupboards that they want to live. Everybody's got a purpose if you recognize the purpose in what you're doing. That you're doing something more than just the paycheck. Because if you're working just to get the paycheck, you're not getting enough money. Guaranteed. But interesting enough, if you find purpose in what you're doing, you wind up getting more money. Because there's an energy flow. As you give, so you receive. And if you give with love, and if you give with purpose, it comes back to you in a variety of different ways. So every other Sunday, usually I'm the Sunday school teacher. Of course, we don't call it Sunday school, we call it Fun Day School. Thank you, that was my idea. And I asked the other day what they wanted to do. You know, if they could do anything they wanted, what would they like to do? One would said that they would like to clean up the environment. They'd like to work to clean up the environment, make the environment better, stop this climate change and stuff. Wow. Right. Another one spoke up and said, I want civil justice. You know, I want justice in the world. Instead of this thing where you're persecuted if you're a particular color or a particular culture or a particular sex or love the wrong people. I want social justice. Wow. That's great. And this one person said, I want to protect the animals. I love animals. I want to protect the animals and see that everybody's got a home and everybody's fed. It's funny because I ask adults the same thing. If you could do anything you wanted, you know what I usually hear? I want to travel. I want to spend more time with the grandkids. You know, I just want to basically kick back and play some golf. We could learn something. And there's a reason I think that so many of us jump off the planet when we do. It's not because of an age situation. It's because we've lost a purpose in life. We lost a purpose for living because if we're just out there getting, we're not giving. And if we're not giving, we get cut off. That's the way life works. Nobody has an expiration date on the bottom of their heel. I know that people are in their 90s, they're productive and active, doing good things for people. Now, a few years, actually, shortly after I got into the radio business, the sales manager I had, Dick Warren, I remember, very clever. He invited me to his church. Now you have to understand, I was raised Lutheran, sort of, but I had been doing a search for spiritual food. I had a spiritual hunger that I could not fill. Even alcohol and drugs didn't fill it very well. I went to church after church after church after church. One religion to another religion to another religion. Somebody made me identify with this. And I came away with a kernel or two in my hand of spiritual food. Until I finally found this church that he taught me to, which was the Tri-Cities First Church of Religious Science in Richland, Washington. And you know, when you came in, you feel at home. I felt at home. And they were singing this strange song, "Be still and know that I am God." Oh, wait. But what I liked was, I wasn't asked to believe anything that I couldn't believe. I wasn't told that I had to believe this or I'd go to hell. I could ask any question I wanted and not be called stupid or a heretic. Well, I started taking classes. I started taking classes, and more classes, and more classes. And I became a practitioner, take more classes. And finally I became a minister, and that was over 33 years ago. Now you can say, well, you're a minister and you're also selling radios? Yeah. They're both serving a purpose. You can understand that more of the financial remuneration comes from the radio business at this point, but I'm happy to take remuneration from the ministry too. That's fine. But I find value in both, and I know that my sales efforts, my sales career is just right and perfect the way it is, and I know that my ministry is perfect right the way it is. It doesn't have to fit any particular mold of somebody else. Never ever compare what you do to somebody else. Find happiness in what you do, just the way you're doing it. Because I'll tell you, just the way you're doing it is the way you should do it. Otherwise, you'd be doing it somewhere else, some way else. How many have tried to find happiness in relationships? I won't ask for a show of hands here. You might be with somebody. Well, what I have found is that without learning to love myself first and appreciating myself first and being complete within myself first, looking for a relationship was like I was on the highway to hell. Not only was I on the highway to hell, actually, I was circling the block in hell. Now, some of you may be able to identify with that. If we've got some childhood issues of not being good enough, or not being loved enough, or not being supported enough, we feel we got some stuff, let's work it out. You know, get a therapist. That's perfectly okay these days. They're online. You can call them up. It's a good thing to do. If you've got a heartache, feel it. I mean, if you had a physical problem, you'd go see a doctor. Well, if you've got an emotional problem, get some support. You know, it could be from a practitioner, a minister, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, whatever it takes. But please, reach out and get some help. Do you know, in a country that's as wealthy as we are, more people commit suicide than any other wealthy country? Because they don't, mostly because we don't ask for help. We've been taught to be tough. We've been taught not to admit that when we've got an emotional pain or heartache, or that we're not perfect all the time. Well, nobody's perfect all the time. Everybody has a disappointment. Everybody gets disillusioned. Everybody feels despair from time to time. And we don't always have the skill set. We haven't been taught the skill set to deal with those feelings. And sometimes what the skill set is, the number one skill set, ask for help. That's the most important tool in your toolkit. And talk to someone. Somebody that knows the truth about you. Somebody that cares for you. You know, this last week there was a lot of celebrations. And a lot, okay. There's a lot of stuff going on. I told you guys last time I was here that my son had jumped off the planet. This last Wednesday was the second anniversary. And I had his cremains. I hadn't done anything other than, well, that's not true. I had his friend make a nice, lovely vase out of some of his cremains. But that's another story. But what, I had this big box, it's the storage unit. I thought, I gotta do something. So I took his cremains down to Washington Crossing at the Delaware and set it loose. I figured what a fitting end for passing on. I knew he would be happy. He'd never been there before, but he was there now. And as I saw his ashes floating down there, with cremains floating down there with tops and rose petals on, floating towards the underneath the bridge, floating towards the ocean. I know he loved adventure. So that was a celebration. I know life's eternal, and I celebrate with that. But also, the following day is my birthday. Yeah, my birthday. Now, do you want to, when somebody asks you how old you are, you want to know how to be years younger than they think you are? Tell them you're 8 years older. So, folks, you're looking at an 80-year-old. Don't I look good for 80? There's a bit of other stuff going on too that, sometimes we get our angst up about. I get my angst up about politics, sorry, but I do. I have opinions, I do. I have opinions about social justice, I do. Any of you familiar with George Orwell? Yeah. If he wrote the book Animal Farm in 1945, and he wrote the book 1984 in 1949. And I'm convinced that if he was alive today, he'd write a book entitled Ensuring U.S. Election Integrity. We got a lot of things to do, but this we need to know, that we all have things to do. We have important work to do. We've got prayer work to do. We've got internal work to do. We're to seek thee first the kingdom of heaven, and all this other will be given to you. But we still have things to do. The point of it is not to have angst about it, not to have anger about it. We're called forth to take a stand and have a voice to do things in life. When we see an injustice, we're there to right it, but not get upset about it, because if we're getting upset about stuff, it means that we're not trusting in God to do what God needs to do. I used to get a little upset. I had recognized what that was. It was a lack of faith. Lack of trust that God knew how to do what God knows how to do. I was trying to tell God how to take care of those people. Big mistake. You know, we heard today that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And in Luke it says that the kingdom of heaven is within you. And you know, Emmanuel, from Emmanuel Swedenborg, Emmanuel means God with us. Notice that. I'm going to share something with you today. It's kind of deep. Okay, but listen carefully. Now, most of us agree that the body perceives objects, right? The body perceives objects. Give me a nod.
Yes.
And we can agree that our minds or our hearts feel emotion, right?
Yes.
And we can agree that the intellect thinks thoughts. So the body perceives objects, the mind feels emotions, and the intellect thinks thoughts. So who we think we are is the perceiver, feeler, thinker, or the thinker, feeler, perceiver. That's how we go around as. And you know what that is? That's our ego. The thinker, perceiver, feeler is our ego, because recognize that is not a permanent part of us. Because our thoughts change. I bet my thoughts change all the time. My feelings change. Depending on what I'm hearing in the news, whether I had my breakfast, whether I had my cup of coffee in the morning, whether I've done my meditation, my feelings change. And my perceptions change all the time, right? Depending on what shoes I'm wearing, the feel of the carpet on the floor, the chair I'm sitting in. So, if that's changing, if my perceptions are changing, my feelings are changing, my thoughts are changing all the time, what am I? Swedenborg tells us. You are that which projects through all of that. You are love. Projecting through the intellect, projecting through the mind, projecting through the body. You are that which is. And that's what's permanent. Now, one time I thought I was real spiritual. Mistake. And I was talking to my teacher. This guy is really good. His name is David MacArthur. And David's got an interesting story. Anybody familiar with inline roller skates? He invented those. Needless to say, David made a lot of money. But he had a spiritual hunger, and he wound up giving it all away. Because he set off a spiritual path later on. He told me, I found out they wouldn't have to have given it all away. But he went off to India, and he studied with a guru by the name of Sri Chimayananda. He was the only Caucasian, and everybody else was Indian. But he was a brilliant man, as you can imagine. Learned Sanskrit, read it, speak it. So much so that he became Sri Chimayananda's, say that 10 times, librarian. That's a really haughty position in an ashram. And eventually, he recognized he needed to come back to the States to bring the teaching of who we were, who people were, who we really are, that we really are love to the world. So I had him at my center in Kennewick numerous times, basically giving classes of the Bhagavad Gita, which is a great book if you haven't read it before. And I was talking to him about how I saw myself as being a wave and God as being the ocean. Some of you might be able to relate. felt really connected, being a wave, with God as being the ocean. Doesn't that sound spiritual? I was quite proud of that. And he said, Mike, instead of you're seeing yourself as the wave and God as being the ocean, realize you're the water. Feel your wetness. You are the water that's once in the ocean, once in the wave, once in the mist, once in the rain, once in the ice, once in the fog. That you are. You are that which projects through all of that. I still get a tingle when I remember that. That's a whole different perspective, isn't it? So, when you find yourself caught up in stuff, and I don't care how intelligent you are, or how spiritual you are, or whether you daily meditate and daily prayer or not, whether you stand on your head, we all run into stuff, right? We run into discord, we run into disappointment, we get our feelings hurt, we get better at it, but still we're going to run into it. We run into sadness. Those times, ask yourself, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Kaptivan Asi. That thou art. Love itself. And so it is. Thank you. All right, so now we get a song. Oh, brother's son. Megan. Affirmations found in your order of service. You ready? What I give says what I am, and I always attract that which I am. I give joyously and with gratitude to that which feeds me spiritually.
knowing God as my source and infinite supply. I am grateful for all the abundant good that is mine, and so it is. Amen.
Let's sing our doxology now, right?
Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise God who teaches all we know. Praise God within, among, above. Praise God in life with acts of love. Amen.
We bless these gifts. May you forever be blessed in everything you do and everything you are. So it is. Okay, now we get Lord, grant me peace. Megan? Anne? Did you want to stand for this?
Stacy.
Stacy? So now's the time for sharing. So I'd like to share how God's showing up in your lives, the celebration, some wonder. Or if you have any questions about it, share. Now's the time to speak up.
Well, I would share something. A very, very dear friend of mine
Can
passed
you
away.
speak up, man?
Very dear friend of mine passed away 2 weeks ago. He was a physician, actually. He was an incredible friend who would do anything for you, any time of night or day. He would figure out what you needed even when you didn't tell him that. But what was interesting was I finally, this past week, went on the funeral home site and read all the tributes to him. And many, many, many of them were from his patients. And I realized that as extraordinary a friend as he was to me and to his other friends, he was that much of a friend to all his patients. I guess in some ways he was lucky because he had his own practice, so he could be a real doctor. He wasn't under constraints to see X number of people in a day or only spend 15 minutes with a person. And he was there for them all the time, on weekends. And he's also very disorganized, and he's left a mess for his brother to deal with. But the fact was that what was really important, he was just incredible, and I don't know why I'm telling you all this, except it gave me an extra appreciation beyond what he was as a friend to me, but he was that way with everybody he encountered in life, and set just such a high example of how we all should be living our lives.
Left from a greater purpose. Thank you, Nina. Okay, anybody else with courage today?
I started working with horses this past week, and so did some for St. Francis to keep me safe because they're so big. And I have so much experience, and the person that is helping me is so nice and patient with me, and everything went really well, and it's just been beautiful to spend time out there in the mornings and reflect, and it is scary, and so I just pray to stay safe out there.
Great, thank you.
I'm really thrilled because my oldest daughter, this is the second career, she's going to be 44. She graduated in March with a BSN in nursing, and I'm a nurse, retired nurse. And it's in California, very, very competitive and very, very difficult. She's single. She just got a nurse residency program, 7 hours from where she lives outside Sacramento. And it's going to be really interesting. It's a small hospital, Marietta Hospital, part of the Loma Linda Medical Center.
That's important.
And Seventh-day Adventists, which is very interesting. If you don't know anything about Seventh-day Adventists, they're one of the most healthiest people in the world.
Right.
And we've been going back and forth, back and forth. What's your opinion? What's your opinion? My husband has cancer, and she was thinking about accepting a residency program at Hershey Medical Center. We're going back and forth, and I said, he's doing well. You would have to work with on a cystic fibrosis unit, which is very narrow. I'm familiar with cystic fibrosis, difficult, people with breathing problems. You'd have to work 5 weeks of 7P to 7A. I've worked nights. The only way I survived working some nights was sleeping from 9 to 10. You wouldn't be able to do that. And then day shift, 7A, and I said, you really want to work progressive care unit. They're guarantee you day shift. You're near my husband's stepdaughter, you're near a friend. He wants you to take this position where you would be healthy and pursuing your own dreams. So she did, and it's very exciting. Yeah, so.
That's awesome.
And she's very, very anxious, so she's going to need a lot of support.
She'll be great.
Yeah, she will.
Okay, anybody else?
Just a quick happy birthday to my second son, Bryce, who's 22 today.
Oh, happy birthday.
And I'm 32.
Of course. Anybody else? No? Okay. This time we've got some announcements. Who's the announcer person today?
I have a lot of announcements.
Come on.
Okay, I'll be quick though. Next.
Come on.
What?
Come on.
Oh, come up?
Sure.
It's not my thing.
300 being broadcast live around the whole world.
Oh my God, I wouldn't have stood up before I done that.
Next week, we're going to welcome Reverend Hare Neely, also known as the outdoor chaplain, for our Sunday service. And the week after, our own Patrick Cody will be hosting a service for us. An email went out about all of the services for August, so have a look if you haven't. And next Friday, our own Meg Soring will be hosting a 12-step recovery of meditation and yoga class if you're interested. And all the way looking to August 25th, Jen Litsky will be hosting a drum circle. And for those of you who don't know, that happens to be Christine's birthday, so that will be a very special time. And thank you to Reverend Mike for coming today. This has been remarkable. and I think you may have something to offer afterwards if anyone's interested.
So, anybody believe in prayer? Okay, a few of you. Our teaching is really all about prayer. How it works in your life. We teach, we practice what we call a scientific form of prayer. That's why we have practitioners. And every minister is a practitioner. What I'm offering for anybody who wants is prayer support today, after the service. After a little bit, meet and greet and that sort of thing. If you'd like to stick around, I'll do some prayer work, either individually or collectively, depending on the number of people that are here. So I offer that to you, the gift of love. All right, so now we've got another song. Blessings to everybody. Know that as you go with love, you're going with God, because God is love and will work where you are, and so it is. Amen.